Jasper here, and welcome back to another episode of Hold My Flashlight, where I tell your tales of true crime, paranormal, and the unexplainable. Our first story was given to me by Reddit user Lyrical Lotus, titled, "Two Men Posed as Cable Providers to Attempt a Break-In, or Worse." This happened several years ago. I was home alone one evening when I heard a knock at the door. This confused me, as no one ever used that door. My husband and I lived in a fourplex at the time, and all of the units had a back door at the top of a narrow staircase. These doors were a little inconvenient to access, as you would have to go around the building and up the narrow stairs, as opposed to the wider main entrance at the front. It didn't make sense to use the back entrance, as I couldn't think of anyone who would go to that door to visit. As I approached the back door, I saw two tall men in the window standing at the door. A chill went down my spine. I did not feel safe opening the door, so I called out, "Hello?" One of the men tapped on the window. "Yes, hello? May we come in? We are with Brenson." At the time, my husband and I had Brenson for cable, but did not have any issues with it. I replied with, "We're not having any issues with Brenson. Is there a problem?" "Ma'am," the man said, "can we come in? We're servicing the area and it's important we look at your cable." I shook my head. "We're not having any issues," I repeated, "so there's no need to stop by." "Ma'am, we are visiting every resident. Let us in so we can do our job." I noticed the man grabbed the doorknob and tried to open the locked door. I slowly grabbed a knife from our kitchen block and held it at my chest. "We're not having any issues," I repeated, trying not to convey the shakiness of my voice. "So you don't need to be here." The two figures appeared to shuffle and then straighten. "Ma'am, let us in. We're on a deadline and need to do our job." I glanced at the clock, gauging when my husband would arrive home from work. I gripped the knife tighter. Ma'am. I saw him try the doorknob again. I closed my eyes and felt overwhelming gratitude for always locking the doors. Just then, a thought came to the forefront of my mind. "I'm sorry, I can't help you. Could I please get your names and badge numbers? I can give your supervisor a call to let them know our cable is fine." I heard another shuffle, and one of the men replied, "No need to, ma'am. We're sorry we wasted your time." With that, both of the men exited the staircase and disappeared into the night. Shaken up, I held the knife tight and tried to get my bearings. I remember making a mental note to call the cable company or the police, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold my phone. With the knife still grasped to my chest and the phone falling out of my other hand, I sank to the floor and cried. When my husband returned home, I told him what had happened. I was still very shaken up and had started crying again after he came home. He immediately called the Brenson Cable Company and spoke to a representative, who informed us that no one from their company was out on assignment in our area. The next day, we asked our neighbors if they had a visit from the company, but no one had. Our next story was given to me by Reddit user Nick1000, who may have discovered the entrance to the back rooms, and their story is titled, "Apartment Elevator Took Me to a Parking Garage When There Wasn't One." I never thought I'd experience something like this, but here I am. I currently work from home and had a break in between clients, so I decided to do laundry so I wouldn't have to worry about it later this week. To preface, my apartment is set up where the second floor is the main floor with mailboxes, the lobby, and office. And the first floor is the basement where the laundry room is, and all parking is outside, and the floors range from 1 through 6. When it was time to move my laundry to the dryer, I picked up my keys and some dryer sheets and went to the elevator to go to the first floor again. I would have normally taken the stairwell since I'm only on the second floor, but I also wanted to check my mail since I hadn't checked it yesterday. I hit 1 in the elevator and almost stepped out when the doors opened. But it didn't open to the first floor hallway. It opened to a parking garage. I'm confused because I know the first floor is all apartments, laundry, and the gym. I mean, I've lived here for over 2 years. I wished at that moment I could say that I stepped out and explored, but I started to feel so freaked out because I know this apartment like the back of my hand, and I know we don't have a parking garage, nor a floor beneath the first floor that I could have accidentally gone to. I pressed 1 again, and the doors closed, but the elevator didn't move. The doors stayed closed for a few seconds, and then they reopened. When they did, I was on the first floor where I was supposed to be. Part of me wished I had taken my phone with me, but honestly, I think I was so freaked out and confused at that moment that if I had, I would have been so focused on getting out. And I know it's silly to be freaked out over a parking garage, but it felt so eerie because I know that we don't have one, nor do we have plans to have one. Our apartment manager would have shared it with us. Our next story was given to me by Reddit user omnipotatoent, titled, "Someone Tried to Use My Empathy Against Me." So I lived alone in a bad neighborhood just outside of the city. At this point, I had been living there for maybe 3 years with no incident. Well, I mean, there were several shootings on my street, but no one shot at me, so no incident, I guess. I'm the kind of person who can't sit still for very long, so I find myself standing or pacing a lot. On this particular night, maybe at about 2 a.m., I was pacing while reading a textbook to prepare for an upcoming test at my university. I stopped pacing for a little while and just stood near my front door to read. That's when I heard my doorknob turn. For some reason, though I nearly shit myself, I was able to calmly look down at my deadbolt to double-check that it was in fact locked, and it was. I looked through the peephole to see who was trying to come in, but no one was standing there. Obviously, this was confusing. I'm neither suspicious nor a believer in the supernatural, but I'm also stupid, so my first thought was, is a ghost trying to break into my house? Thankfully, that thought gave way to a more logical thought of, maybe they're going around back. So I quickly moved to the back door to make sure it was locked. It was, but then my front doorknob turned again. I did a tiptoeing run to the front door, and at this point my heart is pounding. My dog, who is a big protective teddy bear, is looking at me with major concern in his eyes. I look at the front peephole again, but there's still no one there. That's when I hear a small knock on my door as I'm looking through the peephole. Then a small child voice said, "Let me in." Silence. "Let me in." I'm still looking through the peephole while covering my mouth with my hand to make my breathing quieter. Through the peephole, I see a small 3-year-old looking girl walk to the edge of my front porch and look into my bushes. She nods and then says, "Okay," in what I think was supposed to be a whisper. She walks closer to the door again and I lose sight of her in the peephole. She tries the handle again, then knocks and says, "Please help me." My uncle is a cop, so I had heard about people using children as a way to get people to open their door before being attacked. So I'm pretty sure that's what's happening at this point. I wasn't sure how to handle this situation, so I just said, not even into a phone, "Hi, I think someone is trying to break into my apartment." "Yeah. My address? 123 Fake Street Avenue. Yeah, I'll stay on the line." I then saw a shadow emerge from the bushes. Thankfully, they scooped the kid up and ran off. There were 2 people and the kid. People who tried to break into my apartment. Our final story was given to me by Reddit user PleaseKillMeCorn, titled, "My First Ghost Encounter, or Just Sleep Paralysis." This has been something that has been weighing on my mind for a while because I tend to be a huge believer in the paranormal, while still somehow being very nonchalant towards my experiences, so I constantly doubt everything despite being a believer. So here's my lame story. 1 month ago, I was staying at some relatives in Queens, New York, because I was spending my summer vacation there. They had a son who died at a very young age when he got ran over by a van while crossing the Van Wyck on his bike. This, as you would guess, shook the family up a lot, and understandably his mother, my aunt, collected his ashes after his cremation and kept it in the house I was staying at. Fast forward a decade, and their 2 other children, being 1 daughter and 1 son, ended up mentally ill through diagnosed depression and a bad use of prescription drugs, both of which ended up in a vegetative state. As you could imagine, that would be hard for my aunt and uncle, now only left with 2 sick children and the daughter of their daughter. But when I came to the country and spent 2 months with them, they were happy to have me there. After all, I am only 20 and act like I'm 15 half of the time, and we all bonded a lot. I would do electrical work with my uncle and cook with my aunt. Long story short, they started to referring to me as their son and would constantly say how I reminded them of their children before, you know. But now on to the spooky part and the main point of this story. I was asleep one night and I suddenly woke up for no reason at all at around 4 a.m. I slept in the living room on one of those folding hospital bed things that their other son used, and I could see right up the stairs from where I slept. To my surprise, I woke up and saw a boy clear as day, but he looked out of place. Kind of like a green screen effect that wasn't feathered properly, if you get what I mean. This boy was skinny and a little shorter than me at around 5'6", maybe, and he wore a baggy white t-shirt and baggy pants. But as soon as I turned my head to look at him, he was gone. But that's just the beginning. I just stared at where he was before he left, and I could hear something walking towards me because the floors were creaking and my heart started pounding. This was the weirdest thing ever. The bed, as mentioned before, was a hospital bed-like thing, which means it used those springs as a frame and not wood like you would normally see. And my bed just started creaking as if someone was getting on top of it and pressing down the springs. I started to feel like someone was pressing down on me and trying to choke me, but I didn't freak out because I could still breathe perfectly fine despite all that pressure I was feeling on my neck and chest. It stopped for a brief second, then it happened again instantly, and as I was feeling the pressure in my chest, the bed started sinking down more and creaking. After that finished, I just sat up, looked around, took a deep breath, turned my back, and slept. To this day, I'm not sure if it was just sleep paralysis or a paranormal encounter. However, when recalling this story to my relatives, they almost cried and told me I described their son who was hit by the van, even though I have never even seen a picture of him before in my entire life. That's all I have for y'all this evening. If you have a story of your own that you would like to share, you may do so by emailing it to me at holdmyflashlight@gmail.com or by posting in the subreddit. You can also follow me on Twitter at HMFstories, as well as YouTube, at of course, Hold My Flashlight. And if any of you are particularly interested in helping this podcast grow, you may do so by following the Hold My Flashlight Patreon. Alright everyone, good night.